Sounds poppin' YouTube. So I am finally back for the final part of my Cyberman deep dive. It's been a while, my life has been busy and YouTube is really throttling this channel for some reason, but here we are for part 5 of the villain deep dive into the Cybermen. So the Chibnall era.
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written.
It's controversial to say the least. Well, I'm actually not sure it's really that controversial. I think it's pretty much universally hated. But anyway, so the Cybermen didn't show up for the first season of the Chibnall run, but in the second season they came back with the Haunting of Villa Diodante, however you pronounce it. So this is probably the best episode of the Chibnall era. This episode is unironically quite good, so let's just get into it. The story follows the Doctor and the fam going to try and meet a bunch of famous edgelords, famous authors like Christopher Bolladori and Mary Shelley and stuff like that, on the night that Frankenstein begins to get written. So they show up to this spooky party house and hang out with the lads and lasses, but unfortunately this weird ghost keeps showing up and there's this energy field trapping them inside. So this spooky Cyberman called Ashad shows up.
It's not a vision. It never was. It's a traveller, moving through time. And he's trying to get in. That is a lone Cyberman.
Because hidden in the house is this thing called Cyberium, which will make the Cybermen super duper overpowered or something. So Ashad is one of the best Cybermen designs we've ever had. He's this half-completed Cyberman, has elements of pretty much all the Cyberman variants we've ever seen. He has the legs of a Cybersman, his head is closer to the Invasion era, he has the left arm of an OG Mondasian. It's a great design. He also has half his face missing, where we can see his human remains underneath. Ashad is only partially converted, which adds a really interesting layer to his character that we've never really seen in a Cyberman before. He gets angry and shows a lot of emotions, but unlike the 70s and 80s Cybermen, where it seemed out of character, this time it's actually justified by the story. Patrick O'Kane gives an amazing performance. Anyway, Ashad is set up to be this tragic figure that was partially converted, but there's this scene where, they tried to appeal to his humanity, only for it to turn out that he is completely fanatical to the Cybermen and willingly converted. He also killed his own children when they tried to join the resistance against the Cybermen. So this character's great.
My name was Ashad. I did spare your son because he's a useless runt, sickly and weak, and I did have children. I slit their throats when they joined the resistance.
But then he threatens to kill everyone and ruin history unless the Doctor gives him the Cyberium, and she caves, and he goes back to the future to make the Cybermen win or something. And Ashad is the inspiration for Frankenstein. Anyway. So this story is the best of the Chibnall era. Ashad is one of the most innovative and interesting designs we've ever had for a Cyberman. The story actually gives the 13th Doctor some good character moments as well.
Because sometimes this team structure isn't flat. It's mountainous, with me at the summit, in the stratosphere, alone. Left to choose.
So yeah, best episode of the Chib era, which isn't saying anything, but hey. So the Cybermen would next appear in the Ascension of the Cybermen, the next episode.
Coming real, it's the next episode.
And in this episode, the Doctor and co go back to the future to stop Ashad. He's busy killing humans with these ridiculous Cybermen head drone things.
Cyber drones.
Who thought this was a good idea? Anyway, so the fam gets separated and nick a Cyberman ship and blast off. Ashad is trying to get to this transport ship and has an entire army of Cybermen in the basement, and everyone is heading towards this Terran reality or something so they can escape the Cybermen. Basically, in the far, far future, the Cybermen and the humans have basically just beaten the shit out of each other, and it's got to the point where there's barely any Cybermen or humans left. So Ashad uses the Cyberium to do something or other and wakes up his army.
shall begin.
And then everyone gets to the tear, and the Master jumps out, and it turns out that the tear leads to the ruins of Gallifrey. What is happening right now?
How is Gallifrey here?
Wow! It's a good entrance, right? Be afraid, Doctor. Because everything is about to change.
So yeah, all the goodwill that the Haunting episode built up is quickly destroyed. The Cyberdrones look ridiculous. The line delivery is something out of the room.
Carrying the Cybermen that makes other Cybermen scream.
And while Ashad continues to be cool, he doesn't really do much. We see a return of the Cybermen for some reason as Ashad's bodyguards. Well, they're not actually the Cybermen, but the designs of them, like, they're the same. And we get introduced to the actual new Cyberman design, which looks okay. Like, I get that it's a callback to the 80s, but it looks kind of bad. It's very cartoonish and chunky. It has a great retro vibe, but it just doesn't quite work. It's a step up from the Moffat era design, but barely. Like, the RTD era got the Cybermen design on point, and I don't know why it's so difficult to do that. But anyway, buckle up, because you know what's coming next. So, this episode is about the Cybermen, not the Timeless Child. But I'm going to struggle to keep this about the Cybermen. Let's get this out of the way. This episode is like an actual war crime. Like, this piece of shit is nothing but shitty fanfiction and cultural vandalism. You know, you took the greatest character ever made in England and decided you just, you know, get rid of everything that made them thematically interesting and turn them into some kind of bullshit space messiah for literally no reason. Or was it because people didn't like your stories and were mean about you on the internet? That probably was it, wasn't it? The Timeless Child is a travesty not just to Doctor Who but to sci-fi as a whole, and shows that Chibnall does not understand a thing about the Doctor. Chibnall should have been fired after having the script in, immediately. So basically in this episode it's revealed that the Doctor is not the Doctor at all. They're not even from Gallifrey. They're from some breach in reality and nobody knows where they're from. They were found by a Time Lord scientist called Tectean and experimented on because they naturally had the ability to regenerate. And this is how the Time Lords got hold of regeneration, and they wiped the Doctor's memory and just sort of slotted them into Time Lord society. What? So the Doctor is now the cause of all of regeneration. They're a completely ageless entity that's, you know, actually immortal. Never mind the fact that Time Lords had to give Matt Smith a new set of regenerations. Never mind the fact that in Rise of the Cybermen, the Doctor makes a comment about how they need something from, quote, his universe to power the TARDIS, when it turns out the Doctor's not even from our universe.
I need to charge it up. We could go outside and lash it up to the national grid.
Wrong sort of energy. It's got to come from our universe.
But we don't have anything.
There's me.
This is just awful. Like, you took a character who, in the grand scheme of things, is an underachieving Time Lord. The Doctor's a below-average Time Lord. He dropped out of school, he ran away because he had issues with the society, and he was like a proof that, you know, you didn't have to be born special to be special. I know compared to us, the Doctor is, like, special, but, like, the whole theme of the show was that the most ordinary man could change the world, right? Like, at least in the relaunch. Right, that like, you didn't have to be born special to be special, and, you know, that's a really uplifting message and a great message for kids, right? Now you've taken that all away. You've taken a character that was special because of what they decided to do and made him special because of the way they were born. It's silly. And also, like, Rassilon and Omega were meant to be the Time Lords who started Gallifrey. Why aren't they mentioned? Why did they invent this Tectean person? Also, that's a shit name, just like everything in the Chibnall era. I'm not going to get into any further, but unfortunately for the Cybermen, they're in this story, so we have to cover them. So the Cybermen show up at the ruins of Gallifrey because, yes, Gallifrey is destroyed again, this time by the Master, single-handedly. Don't ask how he did that. Remember how in the RTD era the death of Gallifrey was like a big deal, and then in the Moffat era he devoted the entire 50th anniversary special to retconning it, so we could see stories on Gallifrey again? Well, fuck all that. It's dead, again, along with all the Time Lords, and the Doctor doesn't give a shit. Remember how destroyed the Ninth Doctor was emotionally? Whatever. And Ashad has been working with the Master for some reason, because in modern Doctor Who you can't have the Cybermen without the Master anymore, apparently. And so Ashad is written out, the Master just miniaturizes him, so he was a waste of time. And the Master then reveals his dastardly plan to turn the remains of the Time Lords into the Cyber Masters. Not the Cyber Lords, which you know would have actually made sense and sounds better. No, the Cyber Masters. Oui.
Time Lord, organics with the ability to regenerate and self-repair. In cyber armor. Invincible. Perfect army, right? Right? Oh, come in, my pretties.
So basically, there are the Cybermen who can regenerate. The dead Time Lords upgraded. Well, it's not actually specified if he upgraded the Time Lords, like when they're alive or not, actually, which is a bit more horrifying. But it's GG, right? The universe is over, you'd think. Cybermen Time Lords should be it. But no, because this episode is actually just the Master giving the Doctor a PowerPoint presentation about why the Doctor Who lore is shit and Chibnall should rewrite everything.
Now, having seen her adopted child regenerate her body, Tecteun, a scientist and explorer, had a new landscape to explore. She dedicated her life to studying her child.
The Doctor then blows up Cybemasters and escapes the end. This episode is awful, and I'm sorry for the Cybermen being involved, but I'm not going to get into it any further. F in the chat for Doctor Who. I think most people stopped watching around this time, really. I don't know what they were thinking. As I said, I'm sad the Cybermen had to be dragged into this. I'm sad the Master had to be dragged into this. The guy who plays the Master in this he's trying so hard, but the scripts are just awful. And like this guy would have been great in like the RTD era or something like that. I don't know. So the Cyber Master design is shit. They look ridiculously goofy with the headdresses and the cloaks. Whatever. I mean, Ashad's a really cool character, but is literally swept under the rug because Chibnall doesn't know what to do with him. It's awful. It's awful. So the Cybermen showed up during the events of the Flux, but I didn't fucking watch it. Basically, the gist is that the Cybermen got blown back to the Stone Age by the Flux along with the Daleks, by the Doctor or some shit. Who gives a fuck about the Chibnall era anyway? But anyway, the last true appearance of the Cybermen is in The Power of the Doctor. So the Cybermen are an afterthought here, really. They are working with the Master again, as the Cybermen seem to have separation anxiety from the Master. But anyway, Ashad is back because Chibnall realised that he threw away his best villain for no reason. He and an army of Cybermen attack UNIT and all die when they blow up the building and collapse it on them.
That ain't just any Cyberman. It's a Russian doll. Oh, and say hello to my friend Ashad. I killed him once, but he's forgiven me now.
There's also this whack scheme going on with the Daleks where they're trying to blow up Earth's volcanoes, and another one where the Master is trying to take over the Doctor's body. Altogether, it's an overstuffed mess of an episode. The Cybermen should have just not even been in this, and I mean, I covered more of the plot details in this in the Dalek deep dive for the Chibnall era, so I don't really want to do it again. And that was the Cybermen. Overall, pretty hit and miss over the years. I mean, undoubtedly one of the most iconic villains of the show, but they have had more bad episodes than good ones. I think that one of the main issues is that a lot of the writers don't really understand what makes the Cybermen scary or makes them thematically tick. The Cybermen are best when they are desperate and scavenging. They work best when the human element is played up and the body aura is the focus. They do not work when they are just this like universally dominant murder army. That's the Daleks. The Cybermen are meant to be a lot more human, and honestly I want to see some Cybermen episodes more in the vein of Black Mirror in the way that Rise of the Cybermen did it. I think another thing that becomes obvious with them is that each era of the show only has about one good Cyberman story aside from the 60s. The 60s is definitely their best showing as a whole. I mean, if I had to give my top 5 Cybermen stories, not in order, or anything, I would probably say World Enough in Time, Doctor Falls, Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, Tomb of the Cybermen, 10th Planet, and The Invasion. But I mean, outside of the 60s, each era has about one good story. The 60s is definitely the Cybermen's best showings, and then after that, yeah, it's literally just like, I'd say there's no good era for the Cybermen after that. It's just good stories. The 70s and 80s had Earthshock, Russell T Davies had Rise of the Cybermen, Moffat had World Enough in Time, and Chibnall had The Haunting of Villa Dia, whatever the fuck it is. And as far as the designs go, the Cybermen are also very hit and miss. Like, the handlebars are about the only constant feature. I think that the Cybermen had the best design, followed by the OG Mondasians. I think Ashad is up there, but most of the other designs are pretty bad. The 60s, 70s, and 80s all look pretty rough outside of the original Mondasians, and the Moffat era ones look like plastic. The Cyber Warriors are okay, but the Cyber Masters are just too goofy. So yeah, that was the Cybermen. It took us a while to get here, but I finally found time to finish it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, like and share and subscribe, because the YouTube algorithm is just throttling everyone right now, but like, and yeah, if you want to check out the other parts of the Cybermen, I will link the playlist, and if you like the Daleks, I did an entire series about them, so go and check it out. Thank you very much.